The purpose of WealthTalk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. WealthBuilders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 233 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan.
Hello, Chris. Good to be with you again.
Today, we are bringing you a brand new series. It's the first, Kevin, of our new series titled
Head to Head. So the idea behind it is almost like a CEO to CEO dialogue. Because often, and it's great that we showcase people in Wealth Builders doing great things. But for inspiration, sometimes it's good to look at those people at the very top of their profession, way past security, and basically running brilliant mission-led businesses that can serve as education, inspiration, maybe even some guidance for other people who want to get to know what's on the inside mind of some of the most successful people in the world. So we decided, didn't we, to change the format a bit, give you a rest, Chris? So instead of you doing the interview, I do the interview, hence head to head, CEO to CEO. We've got a few people lined up, but I suppose the series is not going to be as regular as clockwork because we need to get the right guests and we need to get their availability because they're much harder to get hold of as well. And of course, we want our own listeners to give us, I suppose, clues to who they would like to hear from. So we've chosen our own first 2 or 3 people. And today is the very first one, Chris.
Absolutely. Today, we're very, very proud and pleased to welcome Mr. Simon Zutshi, CEO of the Property Investors Network, a good friend of yours, Kevin, and rightful first guest on the Head-to-Head series.
Yeah, I couldn't really think of a better one, not least because he's had a spectacular rise recently, not just with Property Investor Network, but with a brilliant business called Crowd Property and a fantastic new connection to expand and scale the business with the Entrepreneurs Institute. And again, we're very familiar with them. In fact, we use their tools every day in our business through Wealth Dynamics. For those who've heard about Wealth Dynamics, just an amazing tool to help you determine whether you're in your own natural flow. So your wealth is building and growing in the direction which is the least resistance to you. And we're very proud of doing that. And we make that tool available to many of our members, don't we, Chris? So, yeah. So Simon, great guest, known him for a very long time now. And I really wanted to showcase his rise and also for him to give some very useful lessons as well that pretty much anybody can act on. And as you'll hear from Simon, very down to earth, very practical. I said to him before we set off on the journey, I said, look, I'd like you to be my first one, Simon, but I need to dive a bit deeper. Can I go warts and all? He went, go for it, Kev. So you'll hear, some of the questions I asked him, were a little tricky, but as always, Simon tells it straight from his mind, straight from the truth, straight from the hip. He's an entrepreneur, and you can hear the cogs turning in his brain continually. You hear the click, 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 click going on. But he's a very, very clever man and an inspirational man to many. And certainly many of our members who use property as a primary way of building wealth have taken advantage of the services of the Property Investors Network, whether it's through their courses and their education materials or whether it's through the regularity of their networking meetings with now sort of 50 meetings across the UK and now expanding into different countries as well, all of which he'll talk about.
And we actually recorded this in a very nice professional podcasting studio in London. And as you say, you really did dive in deep with Simon. I've heard Simon speak on several occasions, and I definitely learned some interesting things this interview that I didn't know about Simon. So do head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/233, where you can see the full video interview. And we're splitting the interview into two parts, Kevin, because it was about an hour long. So you really did dive into lots of different topics with Simon. And therefore, we're going to play part 1 this week, and then we're going to play part 2 next week on the podcast.
Are we leaving any cliffhangers, Chris? Like a good series would do. So I better tune in next week.
Well, all I can say is you will definitely find out some things you didn't know. And of course, Simon will talk about his background, how he got into property, why you can still make money from property, but also learn about Simon's business as well and some of the changes that have been happening over the last few years and what that means for Simon as a businessman himself. So yeah, plenty of interesting bits to hang on there for. So let's get into it then, Kevin, and we'll head to part 1 of your head-to-head interview with Simon Zutshi.
When I decided to do this, I knew instantly who my first guest would be, and it's the fantastic Mr. Simon Zutshi. So welcome, Simon.
Thank you, Kevin. That's very kind of you. Really pleased to be here on your first edition.
The reason I wanted to choose you is because we've known each other for such a long time now.
Have, yeah.
And I immediately resonated with your style, your integrity.
Thank you.
And that really hasn't left me. And we've got a brilliant relationship between ourselves and your business. So tell us about your business.
Yeah. Well, I have a number of different businesses, as most entrepreneurs do. My main business, well, I've sold it. The main business I'm occupied most of the time with, which I'm CEO of still, is Property Investors Network and Mastermind Principles Limited. So PIN, Property Investor Network, is a networking organization. We created the very first networking specifically for property investors anywhere in the UK back in 2003. And that's now grown to 50 meetings around the country, also overseas in the Netherlands and also in Dubai. And then that's kind of linked very strongly to used to be my business, the training business, all about teach people how to invest in property. We don't sell any properties. We teach people how to find great properties, how to raise the finance, all the different various strategies. And we have various 1-day courses, 3-day courses, home study courses. And then our main program is our Property Mastermind program, which you're very familiar and you speak at for us as well.
But of course, the world is a very challenging place right now. Politically, geopolitically, the property market, people tell me, is down. Interest rates are high. You can't really get the mortgages you used to get to, all sorts of things like that. So why don't you just put your feet up and don't worry about it and sit on your hands, batten down the hatches and wait for everything to come back?
Well, I'm in the fortunate position that I don't have to do anything. But I think you, like me, you don't like to do nothing. I would go crazy if I just sat on a beach. I'd go sunburnt as well, but I'd go crazy and my wife would kill me. I'd probably kill her. And so I always want to be doing something. And actually, it's interesting. You should sometimes observe the masses and do the opposite. So right now, you're correct. Interest rates are relatively high compared to the last decade, although probably about the same rate as they were before the financial global crisis in 2008, when obviously the world property markets crashed for various reasons. And there are definitely more sellers in the UK property market right now than there are buyers. That's called a buyer's market, which actually means it's really good for buyers. So whilst many people are standing back and worried about relatively high interest rates, there are less buyers, so there's less competition. And that means you can buy property at a better price. So actually right now, as long as you know what you're doing, it's a fantastic time to be investing in property. And our clients who understand that are doing very, very well. There's some great deals out there right now.
So why is there such a love affair with property in this country?
Well, I think it goes back to, an Englishman and his home is his castle. And in many parts of Europe, there isn't this desire to own property. In Germany, for example, most people rent. But in the UK, I think people want to have their own little piece of the land, the country, the homestead, whatever you want to call it. And so it is a very aspirational thing for many people to own their own home. Now, not everyone can afford to do that. Not everyone wants to do that. And that's why there's very good, strong rental demand as well. And in a UK where we just don't have enough accommodation, and both political parties, the government, Conservatives and the Labour Party, say that we need 300,000 new homes every year. We're building less than 200,000. So it means there's just not enough accommodation. And so whether you're buying to live in or you're buying for an investment or you're looking to rent, there is this high demand. So even though we have short-term ups and downs, which happens in any cyclical market, which property is, if you look at the long-term view, and if you've read my book, Property Magic, which I know you have, one of my 5 golden rules, number 4, is we should always look at investing for the long term. Don't worry about short-term fluctuations. If you're holding for long term, that's how you create true generational wealth. And I know you're a very big fan of that.
Absolutely. So where did this starting point for you come from? Because there's obviously a catalyst in everybody to move from where they were to where they are now. And that's true in the whole wealth building process. Yeah. It's all in transitions from one to another. How did that start for you? Tell me about what you did as a student. Where did you go? What did you do?
Well,
Where was the starting point?
I think I was quite entrepreneurial when I was younger. One of my hobbies as a youngster was magic. And I got given a Paul Daniels magic trick when I was 7. And I just really got into that hobby. My dad thought that was a great hobby to have. And he encouraged me to save money. He said, every penny, every pound you save, he would match, because magic tricks are very expensive to buy.
Right.
And so we would go to a magic shop called Davenport's in London once a year, buy some magic tricks, and he'd match what I say. So I guess he installed that saving principle in me. And I then actually joined a magic club attached to that magic shop for young magicians when I was about 12. And it was amazing. Although I look back now, I didn't realize at the time, that was actually my first mastermind group. Because there were other young magicians and we were learning from each other, learning and progressing much quicker than we would on our own. And I started doing kids' parties. And, when I was 14, 15, I'd be, Saturday afternoon doing a 6-year-old kids' party. And when you have kids and you have parties, 20 kids is noisy and hassle. Yeah. So if you get someone to come along and keep them engaged for 45 minutes while you sit at the back and have a glass of wine to recover, that's a very good thing to have. And so I did pretty well doing that. And I never used to advertise, or word of mouth advertising. And so I was quite entrepreneurial then. I realized actually I was making a lot more than my friends who might start their Saturday jobs working in a newsagent or a shoe shop or whatever. So I kind of thought it was quite interesting. And I guess that's because I had specialist knowledge. I had some skills that I developed over time and I was able to monetize that. I went to university because I was following the traditional career path. You go to a good school, you try and get good A-levels, you go to college or university, you go and get a good job. And that's what I wanted to do. And I came through university in Birmingham, 4-year course in manufacturing, engineering, and business studies. I came out of university, I didn't have a job in 94. So I just did some telesales just to earn some income and show I was employable. And finally, I got what I thought would be my dream job at Cadbury's on a graduate training program. And it was the kind of the perfect job I wanted. I stayed in Birmingham. I kind of liked Birmingham. Right. And at that point, I bought a house, really for me to live in. And I was living in not such a good rental student property. So I bought a house and two of my friends who were still at university rented rooms for me. And I kind of realized that I was living for free because my friends were covering the mortgage and the bills. I thought this is quite good. And I remember my very first landlord when I was a student. He lived in this massive house on a very posh road in Birmingham called Farquhar Road. And
sounds posh.
It was very posh. It's one of the most expensive roads in Birmingham. And when we moved into his house, he was a hands-on landlord. He'd meet the tenants, he'd do the contracts, he would go and inspect the place. He wouldn't do the maintenance. He had some people to do that, but he'd pretty much organise and arrange. He'd collect the rent, chase late rent, all that kind of stuff. So he's full-on hands-on landlord, which is not what I am, by the way. I'll come to a distinction in a minute. I'm a professional investor. He lived in this lovely house. And I remember as a 19-year-old sitting in his home with my friends, signing a contract in his big office. And I said, as a bit of a cheeky 19, I said, excuse me, I hope you don't mind me asking, this is a lovely house. What do you do for a living? And he said, well, I used to be a solicitor. And now I'm just a full-time landlord. And I didn't know what that meant. My parents, my dad was a GP, we're fairly middle class. They own their own home, so we've not rented a home before. Right. And I wasn't familiar with the unless someone teaches stuff you don't know, and no one taught me. And so I thought that's interesting, and the seed went in my head. And then when I had been in my first house for a few years, I thought, well, maybe I want to move a little bit away from the university, which is where I was living next to, and closer to Cadbury's in Bourneville where I was working. And rather than sell that first house, I decided to keep that, buy another one to move into. And that was my first proper rental in 1998. And I looked at the numbers, Kevin, and I realized I was making about £500 of profit per month for about 2 hours work, if that. And yet at Cadbury's, I was still on the graduate scheme at that point, hadn't quite finished. I was making about £1,500 a month for about 200 hours a month. And I kind of thought, hang on a minute, I love this job, but maybe I should do more of this property stuff. And I just started to buy more property.
So the chocolate tasting ran out of pleasure for you in the end,
look, I still like chocolate tasting. I was actually paid, this makes people really sick. I was paid extra money for a Monday morning to go and eat Cadbury's Dairy Milk chocolate and tell me if it's any good or not.
Right.
So I had to take a little test, and I got paid an extra £10 a year to be a Cadbury's chocolate taster.
Wow. Well, that's good. That looks good, doesn't it?
It's very good on the CV. It's a discussion point.
I thought about you the other day because I read something. I'm an economist, and,
yes.
and I'm always following what's going on in a macro, the big picture thing.
Yeah.
The price of cocoa has just soared to $5,000 per metric ton.
Wow.
Right? Which is up nearly 3 times.
Yeah.
And Cadbury's little comment was, we're going to have to put our prices up.
Yeah, well, they're pretty high as it is, I think. but look, chocolate is a luxury good in a way. It shouldn't be, but it is really. It's quite expensive, and I'm not sure if it counts on the sugar tax they put onto drinks as well. It's one of those little indulgences. Chocolate will always be popular, I think. Little indulgence, little bit of pleasure.
So you made a transition from the magic. You're a wizard, Simon, and
Indeed.
You still practice that, I know.
Yes, yeah.
And then you went into employeeship.
Yes.
You did a little bit of discovery on, hang on a minute, £500 a month. How many hours do I have to work for that?
Yep.
Beginning to see the difference from trading time for money to owning assets that generate wealth.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fundamental lesson that most people in the country do not learn.
Yeah.
How did you make the transition then to the distinction that you wanted to make was I'm a professional property investor. And then I'd like you to go and tell me how you move from owning property to teaching property.
Yeah. So what happened was I wasn't a professional investor at first. I was very much a landlord. So I was buying the properties, I was managing them, looking after myself, because that's what my landlord, you learn from people around you. That's what my landlord had done. And that was great. And partly because I hadn't started, I didn't start property to replace my income, but I noticed it was a great income supplement.
Right.
Okay. So I hadn't had that distinction. It wasn't the reason I was doing it. I thought I was going to stay at Cadbury's, progress through the company, become a director. That's my vision. That's what the fast track graduate scheme is all about.
Right.
And I liked Cadbury's. I liked the people. I liked the company. I liked the product. But what I realized, Kevin, I like my freedom just a little bit more. And when you work for someone and when you're a senior manager, you're not paid by the hour, you're paid a salary and you're supposed to go and do a great job. And you only get 5 weeks holiday a year, and that just isn't enough. I like my travel, I know you do as well. And because I had this alternative income coming in, I thought, what if maybe I have a bit more time freedom, I choose what I do? Mm-hmm. Now, just to fill in a little gap, one of the ways I was able to buy these extra houses was not just because I was saving money because I was living for free, but I had a part-time business. I've always been an entrepreneur, running student nightclub events in Birmingham for Birmingham University students, and had money building up in my business accounts. That helped fund some of my early deals. In the early days, I didn't know about creative finance. I was using my money to put down as a deposit to buy property, so that was taking a bit of time. Yeah. And after about 5.5 years, it was 2001, I realized I hadn't replaced my income by then, but actually I had enough to live off. So I could give up the full-time job, stop trading all my time for money, and get a whole load of time back. Now, the problem with that, Kevin, is the tasks you have expand to the time available, Parkinson's law. And so I did my kind of club stuff, and I didn't actually do that much. But one of my biggest regrets is I didn't have anyone telling me how impactful investing in property would be. It was very much a side hustle, a hobby. Yeah. I was just dabbling in. I was doing quite well, but I was dabbling. And I actually went on a course in 2002, a property course, first property training I'd ever done. And bear in mind, I'd left my job by then. And I had this leaflet come through my door. I was listening to, you might remember Nightingale Conants, the company that produced personal development.
Your CDs, tapes then.
Well, there were tapes originally and then CDs. I'm not sure if they're still around. Anyway, but I was listening to lots of tapes like Brian Tracy and Jay Abraham. So I was also on mailing lists and things. I had this leaflet come through my door about going on a property course. And I paid for a bit of training with Tony Robbins and courses. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. So I went on a 2-hour free course in Birmingham, and I sat there listening, and some of the stuff I knew, but they talked about some things that I hadn't heard about, I hadn't thought about. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. And at the end, they said, well, we've got this 3-day course in London. It was £3,000, whatever, you could take a partner. So I thought, great, sign up. Took my then partner at the time. This was in 2002.
Who ran that?
It was a company called Russ Whitney.
Yeah, American though.
American, yes. And they'd come over, they got some UK trainers. So Jill Fielding was one of the trainers. There was a guy as well, I can't remember his name, but I know Jill was definitely the trainer who did that. Right. And some of the stuff I knew, some of the stuff I didn't know. They talked about using other people's money to buy property, and they talked about buying on credit cards. I'd never thought about that. And so I came right off that course, and I actually bought, so my partner and I at the time, we thought, well, let's move in together. So we bought a property in her name because she didn't have one. So we used her first time buyer status, got a 90% mortgage. We put down a 10% deposit on a credit card check. Never done that before, learned that on the course. We bought slightly below market value, added some value to the property. 6 months later, refinanced, paid off the credit card. So that was first no money down deal I'd ever done. I learned it from that course.
Is that when the momentum started to pick up then?
Well, it did and it didn't. I came straight off the course, and I definitely took action as a result. That course was paid for itself many, many times over. But then I lost momentum. And this is the challenge I think many people find. They do some training, or they get inspired, they get excited, and then life gets in the way. Yeah. And I was doing my nightclub business, and I didn't know the value of investing in property, so I didn't really do it. I was just dabbling. And that's why in 2003, I went online and thought, this is really lonely. All my friends are still working at Cadbury's. Right. All my family were working, they had their own home, but not investments. I really didn't have anyone around me who could help me grow and learn. And having done lots of Tony Robbins stuff, I realized the importance of environment, getting like-minded people around you who are going to champion you and encourage you.
We really call that community.
Community is so important. And I had no community. Yeah. So I went online to do an internet search, and there were no property networking groups anywhere in the UK. And there were business networking groups, and I used to go to those, and I met great power team contacts, solicitor, mortgage broker, printer for my business. But none of them really understood property or the challenges I was going through. Right. So I set up the very first networking in the UK in Birmingham, and it was just a small group of people at first, and then it started to grow.
How did you market to them then?
Word of mouth. Remember, this was before the internet.
I was going to say
just people I knew.
No social media, no internet.
No social media. No, well, there was internet, but it was very early days of internet. But no social media, no Facebook, no YouTube. It was people I knew. And I'm a big fan of networking, and I'm a big fan of telling people what you do, and through some of my content, I just knew people through what I was doing. They knew people, and it started to grow.
So
and
how many people came to the first one?
Oh, probably as many as we get around this table. Maybe 5, I don't know.
Okay, it's a start though.
And then it was a start. So I knew a few people, and it got from there. And how I started trading was people say to me, Simon, how come you don't have to work? I said, well, I do work. I've got my properties. I've got my... No, you don't go to work.
Yeah.
Remember, we're talking, 20 years ago now. So there weren't YouTube videos. That people did not know how to do this. So I started telling people what I had done. And that's when I realized what my passion was.
Right.
And for me, property, it's not so much about the money or owning lots of property. For me, property investing is about what property investing can do for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And what it can do for you is allow you the time, the freedom, the headspace to really work out what are you passionate about and what do you want to do. So I'm delighted to say I now do what I love to do. I teach people. Now, I'm not going to do this forever because as a creator, as you are, we kind of get bored of things sometimes. We need to move on. I think I'll always be doing some sort of teaching because I love it. And I particularly like it when people listen and take action and get results. It really annoys me when they don't take action because they're not going to get results. But I love being a little bit of a catalyst in someone changing their life. We help so many people. I get a real kick and a buzz from that.
Well, that's a really powerful thing, isn't it? Because, we're going to talk about schooling in a minute, actually, because it's interesting that your parents were really from that traditional side. You had the exposure to the rich guy and the rich place in Farquhar Lane or whatever it was.
Farquhar Road, yes.
But he never became a mentor.
No.
So nobody really became the mentor, which we pick up from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the fact that the rich dad was a mentor. No. So you didn't have a mentor. So you became a mentor, it seems like.
Yes. Well, I didn't have a property mentor, but I had people around me who influenced me. Right. So not around me, but I would go to Tony Robbins events, and Brian Tracy and these kind of people. And so I realized the importance of mindset. And everyone thinks knowledge isn't, and knowledge is important.
Right.
But I know people who know exactly what to do in property, Kevin, and they don't do it because they don't have the right mindset, the right belief, the right attitude, the confidence to move forward. So mindset, I think, is probably one of the most important things. So I'm always investing in myself to improve my mindset. And I have bad days.
I've noticed that about you. You do spend some money and you go off to different countries.
I travel around the world. You know, I was restricted a little bit during COVID, and you know, we do a lot of virtual events now, and if it's the only way you can learn, great. But personally, I like to get face-to-face in a room with people, connect with them. I just prefer that style of network. I love the energy you get from that.
Right. Yeah, likewise. So let's talk about let's keep going a little, actually, and come back to the children bit in a minute in the schooling. Because even though people, well, you said it earlier on, you know, you live in a house, you rent a house, you probably work in a property, everything, you probably inherit a property at some point, you buy one to live in. You know, property weaves itself through the very fabric of our lives, but nobody teaches a thing about property and nobody teaches a thing about money.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the fact that all of this is going on and we need life skills, and children are living now, children born today will live on average to 100 years of age now. So they've got a much longer life, but nobody teaches this at all until you discover it by chance, like you did, like I did, like everybody does. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's going to cause a massive problem for the individuals and for society, because if we're living longer, and obviously there will be advancements in science and technology, so maybe we'll be able to, you know, keep going longer. But as we get older, our bodies wear out. Our bodies aren't as supple as they were when we were younger. You know, our minds maybe not as sharp as it was as you get older. So there comes to a point where most people won't be able to work. And tragically, what happens to many people is they retire at 60, 65, 70, whatever. It's getting older and older, obviously. And many people, they've been working for 40 years doing something. And when they stop and looking to enjoy their retirement, very often, many people die within 6 months. And I think it's partly because they lose their purpose. They don't have any, what they were doing for 40 years, they're not doing anymore. And that's a tragedy. But if people are going to be living longer, how are they going to afford to support themselves? Now, we have a state pension here. I think it's about just over £100 a week, which is not exactly a lot of money to support yourself. And is the state going to provide for all these people who are living much longer? Who's going to pay for that? Going to be more working people, taxes? Are there going to be less people actually working because of AI? Where's all this tax is going to come from? So I think it would be very naive for someone, even someone in their 20s, to think that there's going to be someone providing for them in the future.
Yeah, the macro picture
doesn't look good. Doesn't look good.
That's why the state pension age is going back and back and back.
Well, but in theory, they try and make state pension just a little bit older than the average life expectancy.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point, but I mean, the current state pension age is 66, right? So I think life expectancy is probably, 84, 85.
Is that much? I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm not sure it's tied to that, but it's really tied to the number of people who are taxpayers relative to the number of people who receive the money.
So think about this. If there are less taxpayers because of automation and AI,
exactly,
who's going to pay it all?
I mean, they're already trialing a 4-day week in Germany.
Yeah.
So some interesting things going on in the world. And if children live to 100, it sounds great, doesn't it? Oh, we've got longer life expectancy. Children are going to live to 100. Okay, but it means they're going to have to work till they're 80. That, to me, is a tragedy that can be avoided by understanding some of the distinctions that you're sharing, and certainly at Wealth Builders we share, which is the challenge of trading time for money instead of owning assets that generate a flow of money, which gives the freedoms that you mentioned. And everybody wants freedoms in different ways, and you've expressed how you like to do that. So I'm guessing that, the freedoms you're enjoying, you're not really going to be at a place where you just, at some age, stop.
No, well, I have lots of investments. I have property, I have some cryptocurrency, I have some shares, I have investments in businesses. So I think it's good you do need to specialize in something, but then I think you also need to diversify a bit. I was way too much in property for a number of years, but I have other investments, and you want to make sure you don't rely on just one thing. So if something happens, cryptocurrency, for example, it's just a punt. We had a very small amount of money. Well, that's just growing quite recently, but it's very small amount of money. It's a punt, right?
Yeah.
But I think having different streams of income is really important. And the problem is we are so conditioned that oh, you have to go and get a job and you have to trade your time for money. It takes a lot of work to get people to break free from that thinking and understand about free enterprise and having businesses and having multiple businesses. A big mistake people make, they go and set up a business, but really they're just working for a tyrant, i.e. themselves. Many people in business are working, they might be earning a good amount of money, but the amount of hours they're putting in, if you look at the hourly rate, they can make more money by flipping burgers in McDonald's. Nothing wrong with that, obviously. And you get free food for life as well. Maybe not the best food, but still. But the point is, sometimes I think people who are in a business, they don't get business. They're still just trading their time for money. And I think one of the best things you can do is actually being a CEO, bringing it back to this content we're talking about, is where you're not the person doing all the work. A CEO organizes people. They're not the person doing the work. Now, I still do things in my business I probably shouldn't do, but I can only do what I do because I've got a great team. One of my businesses is Crowd Property. I go to a board meeting once a month. I have a few phone calls, but that's it. I am not involved, and they probably do much better because I'm not involved. I don't interfere. And I think that's an important distinction people need to get to. If you have a business, doesn't mean you need to be the business. And in my training business, for many years, I was the business. We have other people now helping, but I was the business. And it's a dangerous place to be in.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.